So this we have cotangent of theta plus tangent of theta. So cotangent, we remember, is cosine of theta over sine of theta. And then tangent of theta is sine of theta over cosine of theta. So if we remember back to when we were adding fractions, adding rational expressions, you need to have a common denominator. So in order to do that, then the sine of theta here, this on the left side, we need to multiply cosine of theta to the top and bottom to get a common denominator. On the right side, we're going to want to multiply by sine of theta and sine of theta. So now the denominators will be common. So if we look at the numerators, cosine of theta times cosine of theta, that will be cosine squared of theta plus sine squared of theta on the right side, all over cosine theta times sine of theta. Now, cosine squared of theta plus sine of squared of theta, that is one of our Pythagorean identities. We remember that equals 1. So it's 1 over cosine of theta times sine of theta. Then at the end, you remember, let me separate this. Maybe if you can't see it as easily or quickly, this is 1 over cosine of theta times 1 over sine of theta. Then remember, these are reciprocal identities. So cosine is really, this answer is incorrect. This should be secant here. Sorry, that's an incorrect answer there. So this would be cosecant of theta, and then this would be secant of theta. Cosecant theta, secant of theta here. And then, so just remember that cosine of theta is really just secant of theta. And then our sine of theta becomes our cosine of theta. Here. Sine of theta becomes, our cosecant of theta. So that's how we get this answer here. So number 2, we have secant of theta times sine of pi over 2 minus theta. So remember that this is our cofunction identity. That's just cosine of theta. Secant of theta, that is 1 over cosine of theta. Okay, so here. Then we notice that they canceled out. So here we go. Cancel it out. And all we're left with is 1. Our next one, we have sine of x, cotangent of x, secant of x. So let's just simplify everything. Sine of x doesn't change. Cotangent, though, changes to cosine of theta over sine of theta. Then we have our secant of x. Secant is 1 over cosine of theta. And so now we can cancel things out. So we see that sine cancels here, cosine cancels here. So all we're left with is 1. This next one, we have cosine theta minus cosine theta, sine squared of theta. So it's kind of similar to one of the examples we did. Let's factor out a cosine of theta, divided a cosine of theta from each one. So then you're left with 1 minus sine squared of theta. And remember that 1 minus sine squared of theta, that is our Pythagorean identity. And so therefore that changes to cosine squared of theta. And we have this other cosine of theta. And so when we multiply them together, we get cosine cubed of theta. This last one, we have tangent of x, cosecant of x. So let's deal with the numerator first. Tangent is sine of x over cosine of x. And then our cosecant is 1 over sine of x. And then we are left with the bottom, secant of x is 1 over cosine of x. So looking at the top, first of all, we see that sine of x cancels. So we have 1 over cosine x at the top divided by 1 over cosine x. So when we're dividing by a fraction, we are going to multiply by the reciprocal, right? I can rewrite it like this. It's divided by 1 over cosine of x. So you multiply by the reciprocal times cosine of x over 1. So those cancel out, and that's why the answer is 1.